Welcome to Instant Reaction as the Cardinals are nearing a deal to trade Brendan Donovan to the Seattle Mariners. Katie Woo, first with the story. Jeff Passan of ESPN reporting that a third team, the Tampa Bay Rays, will be involved. Mike Claiborne, you see Brenden Schaeffer, Joe Roderick, Randy Karraker, and we're thrilled to have you with us here on STL Sports Central as the Cardinals are nearing a deal with the Seattle Mariners to send Brendan Donovan there. Joe Roderick, your first reaction.
My first reaction is JJ Weatherholt's opening day infielder. Right now for the Cardinals. You don't really have anyone left right now.
Right. He's there. And I wonder if the Cardinals now know that Lars Nootbaar will be available for opening day. Otherwise, your opening day left fielder, you're looking at Nathan Church. Brendan, since you're on the top of the screen there, what are your reactions?
Yeah, this was interesting to see come down. We've been debating it in recent days, whether the Cardinals would be able to find the package to their liking. And interesting per the reports that they've involved a third team with the Tampa Bay Rays as well getting involved. So what ends up happening there will be intriguing to see. We know some of the names and prospects that were rumored to be at least interested in if you're the Cardinals when it comes to the Seattle system with Senja, the switch pitcher that I know Joe really is intrigued by. Are there other prospects from that system, or did the Cardinals and the Mariners have to involve the third team in order to maybe get another prospect coming to St. Louis's way that perhaps the Mariners didn't want to part with that capital, that value, but they were willing to send something to Tampa to potentially even things out? That's going to be interesting to see.
All right, Claibs.
You know, we all been talking about, as Brendan said, this has been something that's been going on for a while. But while I am interested in prospects, I kind of like to have some guys that can play now. So I'll be anxious to see what players are close to being big league ready that we will see in 2026. I wish Brendan nothing but the best. You guys have been around him, classy guy. He'll do well out in Seattle. I like the fact that we're dealing with two teams who I think everyone in baseball will tell you that they've done a good job of developing young players. Tampa's done a really nice job. Low payroll is what they've been managing a lot. Seattle was a team that went for it this year and found themselves in pretty good shape with a lot of homegrown players. So if for the Cardinals' sake, it sounds like they're going to get some legitimate prospects back compared to suspects when you deal with certain other teams.
And guys, I would think that Seattle, they were in the LCS last year. They're a team that feels like they're pretty close to being a championship quality team. And with the Cardinals, Claims, to your point, if you trade Brendan Donovan now and you have your senior guy is Lars Nootbaar, obviously, but otherwise you're counting on Mason Wynn, I guess, being the leader of your team. And you're right, that veteran presence is not there right now, which puts, in my opinion, more of an onus on the manager and the coaching staff to guide these players through what are sure to be some tough times for a really young team.
Yeah, and, I don't think the Cardinals are done. I think the leaders on this team aren't ready to be leaders, okay? I'm not I don't Lars Nootbaar has been around for a while, but I'm not sure if I want to call Lars Nootbaar a leader, especially with Nolan Arenado not around. Mason Wynn, I think, wants to be that. But, you got to lead by example. You got to show up and play every day. And I don't know if we still have the era where guys stand on top of a table and yell and scream and pound and do things like that. So maybe there's a veteran somewhere in this deal or one down the road that can come in and just kind of show guys how to win. Because remember, they don't have anybody on this team that's ever won anything. So you better find somebody who's a winning player. When you have more coaches on your team that have won than you have 26 players, that should tell you something. So I think that there's going to be more to be done in order to ensure that there are some people who actually know how to teach guys what winning is all about.
Claibs, you're around the team all the time. What about a guy that, as far as leadership goes, he's only 23, but Mason Wynn, it seemed like last year he was the face of the franchise, and now this seems to be it's his team. Is he ready to step into that role?
Well, that's a good question. The Gold Glove certainly doesn't hurt his credentials. Mason Wynn, I think, has to be able to embrace all the things that come with it. First of all, Mason Wynn needs to figure out what kind of hitter is he going to be. Is he a guy that's going to swing for the fences and put himself in peril? We don't even know where he's going to hit in the order. So there's a lot of things that he needs to figure out internally before he can start to take that next step of being a guy that people look to. He's always been a feisty guy at every level. I don't think anybody will ever question his heart and his desire. You have to keep him healthy too. I mean, he's had some injuries that have slowed him down. So again, I'm gonna reserve judgment and just feel like there's got to be somebody else who can come in and show him how to win. It's one thing to be a leader, but if you never led anybody on, or you never been around any winning players, it's kind of hard to know what that next step looks like.
And guys, let me point this out as well, because we're talking about clubhouse stuff. He's actually their best player on the field too.
He's their best player. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's no doubt.
And so that's a big loss too, not just the leadership aspect, but actual going out and playing every day is a big part of it too, Schaefer.
Yeah, he was their best, most productive player. And with 2 years of team control, that's the reason he gets traded right now. I just tweeted this out because I think it's true. Whatever the package ends up being that the Cardinals get back for Brendan Donovan, it is really a shame that things devolved to a point where the powers that be felt this was the best course of action to trade away a player like Brendan Donovan, who at another time in another era of Cardinals baseball would have had Cardinal for life written all over him. And so I think that's a shame of it, because I think eventually when he gets the contract extension that he's looking for and that he deserves, probably coming from the Mariners now, you'd have to expect. I don't think that price tag is going to be one that is eye-popping in a way that says the team signing him to it won't get value for Brendan Donovan. But with where the Cardinals are, they're at really ground zero of this build, of this rebuild, and they don't necessarily know how quick it's going to happen. And if it's not going to happen in the timeline of the next couple of years, they say, hey, we've got to get young pieces that we can rebuild the cupboard so that we can jumpstart this thing. And unfortunately, that does lend them to the decision to trade away Brendan Donovan. We'll see what they get for him, guys, but you're right. Like, the aspect of, I was the whole time intrigued by the idea, and I don't know how many people agreed with it, but the idea of holding Brendan Donovan through this, letting him be one of those guiding presences in your clubhouse through a rebuild, and then to tack on a few additional years beyond what would have taken him to free agency and have that be a pillar that you build around and usher in the new era with Brendan Donovan rather than use his trade value to jumpstart it in the way that they're doing. We don't know which way would have been right or wrong. How would he have aged as a player in St. Louis? I guess you can follow his career with the Mariners to find that out. But I do feel like there was an aspect of that trading away Arenado, Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras, those guys were on veteran contracts in an era where the Cardinals are trying to trim the payroll this year and not necessarily have contending in 2026 as their number one goal. But this is that first move, in my opinion, that takes you into the next tier of a rebuild where you say, hey, we're starting to tear away some of the players that were going to be around still for a couple of years before free agency because we want to make sure we get value for them. I do think it tells you about what 26 and arguably 27 will look like as well in terms of the competitiveness of the team. But Heimblum did say this was going to be a long-range plan. They had to have the long view of things, and I think this is the first trade that really exercises that in the way that the Cardinals are going to be going.
The other thing I throw into this as well, I don't know if I want to be stuck with a 30-year-old guy that has 1 year left of control. That's a huge step for a player at that age level. So I think, if you're going to move him, this was the time you move him at 29. Again, 29, not 27, not 26, 29, going on 30. Free agent at 31, and 31-year-old free agents without a real resume really don't draw that sort of luster. Along with the fact that he's a utility Gold Glover, but we've seen him play everywhere, obviously. But what is he really good at? What's his best position? And I think there's a lot of things that would come into play that would make me say, if I'm ever going to move him, I'm going to move him now, where he can certainly help a team that's not counting on him every day because they have a really good lineup. So, but he can fit right in wherever they need him to hit. And you know what? It's probably better off for him and eventually the Cardinals because they're going to be younger and they'll have some players with maybe greater potential.
We do have one name that has been added in. Claibs, your guy Bob Nightingale is saying that Mariners utility man Ben Williamson is being traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. So that's one of the names that has been that's
Can
been
he play
linked.
third base?
He's not going to be
He's
for
not
the
coming
Cardinals. So he's not going here. So
Wait a minute. He's coming to the Cardinals?
he's
No,
going.
he's
He's
going
going
to the
from the
Rays.
Mariners to Tampa. So
okay, my bad.
That's the only so far. Yeah, so far nothing as far as what the.
So we
what
don't
the
know what we're
Cardinals
getting
have
back
applied.
yet.
That third
Haven't
team is
seen anything yet.
interesting,
Yeah.
but we don't know exactly how it impacts the Cardinals. But
I tell you what, I'll take their left fielder, Tampa's left fielder.
yeah, I don't think you're
You don't
getting
think
guys
you
off
don't
the
think
big
I'm
league
getting him?
roster. I don't
Who's
think
the-
that's
what-
gonna-
I think you have to, at some point, you have to get a big league roster play because you don't have enough guys in your own organization that are big league ready. I know
Well,
one of you guys said Nathan Church is going to be in left field. You got to be kidding me. How many more
I mean,
left-handed
Claves,
hitters do we need?
I don't know that it'll be Church, but Joshua Baez, Jose Fermin.
He's not ready.
Look, man, I'm not saying that this is going to lend toward the Cardinals being a 90-win team in 2026, though. I think we see the writing on the wall.
Oh, wait a minute, man. I wrote it down already.
I know.
Damn.
That's why they may not be prioritizing what we're about to see. It's going to be that long-range view. That's why I think they're not going to worry about the big leaguers just yet. I think they're going to get AA talent, maybe a AAA guy in this Donovan trade. I don't know. We're always about to find out, obviously.
See, you know what? I think that's a plan you probably could have gone with 3, 4, 5 years ago.
That's fair.
You got to remember something. This is the first time the Cardinals have had to get out of line, okay? And Cardinal fans aren't used to it. We aren't used to it. And to roll out a bunch of minor league guys or a bunch of guys that are AAAs and some 4A guys, that's not going to go over well in an era where a fan interest, you need to be able to get on board with that. And while you can tell guys these guys are great prospects, and you know what somebody's going to say? Yeah, you told me so was Jordan Walker. You told me the same thing about Nolan Gorman. So at some point, you better have some playable people on the field at a big league level who maybe are backlogged in Seattle or Tampa, that maybe the guy that's in front of him, he's not going to play. So maybe we get that guy too that's good enough, but not good enough to play on a team that's better than the Cardinals.
I want to ask you, Randy and Claibs, I want to ask both of you guys this because you have seen more Cardinal baseball and more eras of Cardinal baseball than Brendan and I have. Mm-hmm. We all knew that there was a rebuild coming. Did you expect this? I mean, did you expect Gray? We knew Arenado was going to go, and we knew that was going to be the start. Did you expect it to be this massive of an overhaul?
This is down to the studs, and I did not expect this, primarily because I didn't think that those players would, especially Contreras, would agree to be traded. But when you trade Donovan now, as you mentioned, Claibs, 29-year-old guy, you don't have veterans on this team. You don't have service time on this team. This is Pirates, old-time Royals. This is down to the studs teardown here with the departure of Brendan Donovan. Now, you do have Dustin May, right, in your starting rotation, and you still have some older guys, even though they're like you have Ryan Stanek. O'Brien is 31, even though he doesn't have service time. But no, this, in my opinion, the Cardinals have taken this down to the studs now, and it is a total rebuild.
And the other thing that comes with that, it almost is an indictment of where your organization was before this year, because you don't have any players. Well, you have one player that's in the top 100, but in some rankings. So it's kind of an indictment on how bad you were before we got to 2026, which is why you're going out and loading up with other teams' prospects, because you haven't been able to develop enough of your own that have been able to step in and make the legitimate contribution you were hoping for.
By the way, let me make this here, because you were talking about the possibility of Nathan Church. I know that Oli Marmol really likes Alec Burleson at first, but I know others in the organization have not given up on the idea of Ivan Herrera maybe sliding over to first base because he has the hands, he has the ability. I wonder if now, because of where they are, and we don't know the health status of Lars Nootbaar, but I wonder if the Cardinals might be inclined to give Herrera a few reps at first and maybe Donovan a few reps in left field, just in case in the early going you don't have a guy like Newt Bar available. That just seems to make sense to me because, like you said, Claibs, do you want to have 3 left-handed hitting outfielders on opening day if you plug Church in there?
No.
And
I need some versatility.
But at least
and you know what? And you're right about Herrera. Herrera, you better bring more than catcher's mitt to the ballpark. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First base is something I think you can handle. I know he wants to catch. You know, he had the surgery. He's been working on it, his throwing and all the other things. But, you know, we're learning calling games is something you just don't fall out of bed doing anymore. So that element has to come into play. And the only way that comes into play is you have to have reps, which means you have to play. So with that said, he might end up being a great catcher. I don't know. But I think my concern is how much will the catching duties take away from his offense compared to him playing first base? I thought it did wonders for Wilson Contreras last year. So I'm definitely making sure he brings at least a catcher's and a first baseman's mitt to the ballpark.
I know Brendan has to get going here. He has a radio show to do at 4 o'clock in Como. So, Brendan, final thoughts. What are you looking for in this return here?
I'm looking for prospects. I know, and like, it's not even really my own personal desire. I would like to see, as Claibs mentioned, the Cardinals get some big league talent as well, because the less big league talent you get coming back, the leaner your roster is going to be for 2026. But I think in the reason that they're trading Donovan is because, 26 and 27 probably don't look like their years. And those were the years they had team control over this player. So they're going to reset the clock with some guys that I believe are prospects. They'll probably get one really solid prospect from the Mariners. Senja is probably the guy you hope for, because I feel as though getting pitching has to be still the priority right now. And getting an upside pitcher, a guy that could turn into something, is ideally what the Cardinals are looking to do. Now, did they have to turn to Tampa Bay to maybe get a prospect like that if Seattle wasn't willing to trade the pitcher the Cardinals wanted? That's what I'll be intrigued to see. And of course, Joe, it'll be covered on Card Central 365 throughout the rest of the week as we find out more information.
Absolutely, Brendan. Thanks for jumping on with us in the short amount of time that you had, as he is gone, and now it's just the three of us as we're sitting here waiting for a return to pop up. I know Katie Woo said that the deal is pending medicals, so we're sitting here and kind of waiting to see what the return is. I want to go back to kind of what I said my initial thoughts were on this with Weatherholt. Do you guys agree? I mean, does he have to be on the team opening day in the lineup on opening day now? If he's your
starting second baseman
like this,
he's your starting second baseman.
And I don't think there was any doubt about that. I think that was going to happen whether or not Brendan Donovan was here or not. I think Donovan was going to either be a utility guy, third base, left field, and maybe a little bit at first. But I think J.J. Weatherholt coming in, like you said, Claibs, was going to be your everyday second baseman. And now the path is clear for him, and real great opportunity for these young Cardinals up the middle. And again, because this is what the Cardinals have said, might not be what we love, but Herrera behind the plate, young player, Weatherholt and Wynn at the Keystone combo, and then Victor Scott the second in center field. That is a talented group. I don't know if they're great players, but that's a group with physical talent and skill sets.
Yeah, I agree with you, Randy. And that could be a group you can run for 10 years. My concern is what you look like in the corner, certainly at third base. I'm not comfortable there at all. And I also think, what does left field look like? I know Lars Nootbaar had some surgeries, but Lars Nootbaar was not the guy that we thought he was going to be even before he was hurt. So, that, and along with finding some more right-handed punch, are the things that are essential right now. But going up the middle, I like what it says on paper. Love to see it on dirt and grass at some point in the very near future. And if we can get that going, I think the rest will be a little easier, especially if we're loading up on alleged pitching. We're getting a lot of arms. We know that. I don't know if any of these guys can pitch or not. And I think that's the fun thing about this. We'll all watch at the same time. and we don't know who's a starter. We don't know who's a reliever. We don't know who's a closer. And we don't know how you're going to use your bullpen. I mean, I'm of the belief that you have to have two closers in your bullpen, because the way you use bullpen guys now, you have to have a shutdown guy in the 8th and 9th inning every day. And some pitchers can't go 3 days in a row. Some pitchers aren't as good as the second day. So you better have somebody who can jump in and assume that role.
So Romero as one and Swanson as the other? You have a lefty righty?
Swanson, yeah, I like that combination. Riley O'Brien showed some real promise last year. I think his was more of a confidence level. So what does that mean for a guy like Gordon Graceffo? What does that mean for some of the other players that the Cardinals have acquired in the trades here recently? Is there another lefty that can come in and be tricky? And then you mentioned the guy we picked up as a free agent. He's got to be a plus out there. Maybe he's the bridge guy for a while until we figure out who else can do something.
Hopefully he's Phil Maton, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully he's
exactly
this year what Maton did last year.
So as the commenter says here, Sound of Silence says JoJo will be heading to Toronto. I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, with everything that we have seen, all the moves that we've made, who's to say that JoJo Romero is going to be in Jupiter at this point? Or is that a guy that maybe you still hold on to as relief pitchers? Are they going to be more valuable at the trade deadline than in the offseason?
Yeah, I think you got to have something at the deadline to be able to offer. And while JoJo was reasonably effective, I think we were more enamored with him than a lot of teams were. So I think he's a guy who's still trying to earn bona fide stripes to be a legitimate commodity when the trade deadline rolls around, if you want to move him.
Hey, Claibs, you may or may not know this better than I, but I can tell you this. 2 years ago, they told Zach Thompson coming out of spring training that he was their number one lefty reliever. Has the relationship between Thompson and the organization frayed? I know a lot of relationships got better once Heim took over. And does he have the stuff to be a lefty in the bullpen?
That's a great question. The injury shut him down last year. If you go back 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they couldn't figure out what weight was good for him. Then they didn't know whether he was a starter or not. Then they said, well, maybe he is a reliever. Well, maybe he's a closer. He's a left-hand. I mean, he was thrown into a mix where nobody really knew who he was. And maybe they still don't. They didn't put him on the 40-man, so I don't know if somebody else decided to bring him in. But I would think a guy who was a former pick in the first round, somebody's got to take a flyer on him and just say, let's just see what you got, because if nothing else, you're well rested.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. And by the way, the Cardinals, I would think, will have a 40-man spot available after the trade of Brendan Donovan. Let's get to some of the reaction, because that's why we're here. Instant reaction. F-Right 22. I am sad. I get it, but I am sad. Hey, Brendan Donovan, and Claibs, you're around that clubhouse all the time. You can give us a gauge of how important and how beloved Brendan Donovan was in that clubhouse by his teammates.
One of my favorite people, period. And fortunately knew him right off the bat. We did a Cardinal caravan together and learned about him and his family, stayed in touch with him. Ironically, we were on a Cardinal cruise here recently, and a guy that was in the minors with Brendan was on the cruise and small talking. They were roommates. And so he said, well, how often do you guys talk to him? And we said, we'll talk to him right now. And we called Brendan from the middle of the Atlantic. And he was putting his kid to bed, and he called us back, and they caught up. And I just think the world of him as not only as a player, but as a person. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story of why he wears his hair long. Have you guys ever heard this story? So
I think I have, but yeah, go ahead and tell it. I like it.
His dad was deployed in the Middle East. He served in the Air Force. And Brendan, everybody was wearing their hair longer in school, and he asked his dad, can I wear my hair a little longer? And his dad said, only if you have good grades and you respect your mother. And so Brendan said, well, the grade part was hard because I was already scared of my mother. So I was never going to have a problem out of her. And that's how he ended up growing it. And, the rest is history. But, and you guys have been down there. He's a guy that when he sees you, he comes, instead of just nodding his head or whatever, he stops, looks you in the eye, shakes your hand, says hello. Just a wonderful guy to hang out with on the road, and I will miss him. but I just thought the way he carried himself is something that we didn't have enough of. And that's only because of lack of experience. He would fit in well with that Seattle bunch.
I want to get in, go back to the comment that you had up here that you just that you talked about earlier about the person that said they're sad, they get it, but they're sad. I really do hope that the fan base understands what this year is, because as you guys have mentioned, this is something that we have never seen the Cardinals have to do. Trade off. They were bad. There were bad years in the 90s, but we've had 2 decades of just spoiled good baseball with superstars and future Hall of Famers on the team. And there might be some rough watches this year.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm going to disagree with you on that. You know, every team's going to have their highs and lows, but you know, this is not a 100-loss team. Okay. I think there's enough talent to make themselves competitive virtually every night. Now, do they have enough every night? Probably not. But I don't think this is going to be, the Chicago White Sox of 2 years ago, where they're just going to go out and just take a beating every night. There's enough guys with major league experience that maybe they turn the corner this year. Maybe this is Jordan Walker's year. Maybe Victor Scott learns how to put the ball on the ground and really take advantage of his speed. Maybe this is the year Alec Burleson is that guy who's going to hit you 25, 28 home runs, hit 285, and really be a contributor. And who knows about Nolan Gorman? I mean, the jury's out on him, but I think there's enough talent on this team to be reasonably competitive. They're not a 100-loss team. I don't think they're a 90-loss team. They'll fight, but I think that they'll be in a lot of games, because here's another X factor. The manager and coaches and everybody in uniform has more resources to work with. And if there's one thing I've learned about this Cardinal staff as a group, man, they are always teaching. And I use the example this year. Next to last game of the season, we're in Chicago and we're getting our brains beat out, okay? And I'm in the dugout, right next to the dugout, and I see John Jay with his arm around a player, still coaching, pointing something out to him about this situation. That's it. You know, most guys have already made the reservations to go home. But when you have people who are still committed to making sure guys don't take anything for granted when it comes to playing this game, those are sort of coaches you're going to need here. And I think between Jay and Descalzo and Dusty Blake, all those guys really kind of understand we're going to have to give them some tough love along the way, but also have some expectations that you're going to be better than what you were last year.
We're waiting word on what the return for the Cardinals will be as they trade Brendan Donovan to the Seattle Mariners, and the Tampa Bay Rays also involved in the trade. I want to go back to reaction that we had just a moment ago. Nick Lauman, who said, "Can we start to focus on right-handed power bats, guys?" I think, and in talking to executives around the game with the Cardinals and with other teams, I think that the right-handed power bat has surpassed the stud starting pitcher as the hardest thing to find in baseball now.
You know why? It's very simple. We went through a generation of parents who thought everybody should hit left-handed or switch hit. And
Claims
now
that generation hasn't stopped yet.
Those parents
being out there and watching
everybody wants to hit left-handed, and we've forgotten what power hitters are about. We design ballparks to make them left-handed hitting conducive. So for all you parents out there who want little Johnny to be, hit left-handed, play shortstop, or play center field, you got your wish. So now we're stuck with them, and most of them can't play.
And this is why the Cardinals had and still have such high hopes for Jordan Walker. Now, they're very happy with the way that Walker has approached this offseason. He knows that he is running out of chances, and he'll probably get till the All-Star break this year to show that he's better than what he's shown so far, and he needs to be more consistent. But aside from Herrera, and like you said, Baez, we don't know what he's going to be. But in terms of guys that are close to the majors, Herrera and Walker are really the only guys. Baez might be here by midseason, but the guys that you think, okay, this can be a major league right-handed power hitter, those are the two.
Yeah, no, you're right, Randy. And there's nobody even close after that. Baez, It's interesting you bring him up because you know what? He was one nod and one autograph away from being let go. They're going to make him a pitcher. He was so bad offensively.
Wow.
But as we've seen, guys, sometimes it clicks. And once you know it ain't broke, you don't try and fix it. And that's what we've seen with him. And we had to take into account he was a high school player. And those guys take a little longer to develop. So maybe he's that guy. Now, with that, maybe there comes a lot of strikeouts. I don't know. I mean, you know, we haven't seen enough of him in that battle of fire yet. But we don't have much behind him. Bernal, the catcher, he's a switch hitting catcher. He's a guy with a little pop from both sides of the plate. But, you know, we have a lot of catchers. And he's going to push for a job. He'll push for a job. I don't think there's any doubt about it. But as far as a natural right-handed hitter, there's two things this organization doesn't have: enough right-handed bats and enough third basemen. And that's something that they have to fix, and they have to fix it too.
Hey, Clay,
go ahead.
I'm just you mentioned that, and the first thing I thought of was Joe Torre, who was a catcher who moved to third base and became a reasonable third baseman. You got Jose Oquendo down there in Florida. We're talking about Herrera.
Now you want to move him over to third base now, huh?
You know, or Jimmy Crooks or somebody. I will, but you know what?
Yeah.
If you're concerned because they don't really have a third baseman in their system, do they?
No, I mean, hey, but if we're gonna start talking about changing positions and putting guys at third, I mean, Walker was drafted as a third baseman.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna play that game, if we're on MLB The Show and we're just wanting to do that, I mean, I would say Walker to third, Herrera goes out to right field if we're having, you know, doing that.
You know, that's an interesting proposition, Joe. And I'm not sure if everybody's going to be on board with that, starting with Jordan Walker. Although I will say this, if you get to the park early, he takes a lot of ground balls at third. You know, on days he'll take some ground balls at third. So I don't think he's lost it. I guess he'd be the next Troy Glaus as far as guys with that kind of size playing third base. But you know, in a pinch, who knows? But I just think if I'm Walker, I'm going to say to you, wait a minute, you have tormented me for the last 3 years to go out and play a position I've never played before, ever in my life, in the outfield. And now you want me to come back to the infield because you don't have anybody who's better than me as a third baseman. I haven't played it in 3 years. That's going to be interesting. But I guess if I'm Jordan Walker or any player, I don't care where you put me as long as I'm playing.
And they have Sajasi. Sajasi could play third. And I don't know about the upside of him, but at least but you'd rather have him.
He can stand over there. He can stand over there. You're right.
You'd rather have him there than mess up Jordan Walker again.
Right? Yeah, I guess. I see. I don't know what Sajasi is. I look at him as a utility guy.
I agree.
You know, he's a guy that can give you a little this and a little that, but not enough of anything to make him an everyday guy.
And you know, that's one. That name in 365s when Brendan and I are doing the shows, Sajasi's name, Fermin's name are two names that keep popping up because as we sit here and talk about this rebuild this year, you're going to see a lot of games with Fermin and Sajasi in the starting lineup, and that'll be quick reminders that this isn't a team that's contending for much.
But you know what, Joe? What I would say to that, I think those two have grown from when we first saw them. And maybe if we don't put the title of utility guy on them and just kind of figure out how many games or how many at bats is he worth before you sit him down, you know, I think they're better players now than when we first saw them. Fermin hit 285 last year and it came up with some big hits. Didn't get himself out a lot. You know, I don't know what his position is defensively. And so JC had a couple of little mild streaks where he was okay. I don't know what his position is either. But there's a place for him on the team. Now, the problem is they're both right-handed. You like to have one hit from the left side, although we have enough left-handed hitters that start. But I think there's a place for both of them.
That is Mike Claiborne, Joe Roderick, Randy Karraker. The Cardinals are closing in on a deal to send Brendan Donovan to the Seattle Mariners. And we're waiting to find out what the return is going to be. But we want you to know that with Super Bowl 60 coming up Sunday in Santa Clara. You know, the Super Bowl deserves a sports book built for the moment, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60, puts you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. And when anything can happen during the Super Bowl, DraftKings has your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half of the game, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. Hey, you want to look at some great over-unders. The over-under for this game, 45.5. I kind of like the under here. And you should take a look at it at DraftKings Sportsbook. If you're new to DraftKings, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports that you see right there on your screen. And you can turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
All right, let's get to some of your responses again, because this is instant reaction, and we've got our reaction, and I know that you want yours. Jay Call, hopefully they got somebody good in return that can play this year. Guys, our buddy Greg Amsinger, who studies the draft, he is the broadcaster for the draft on MLB Network. Greg thought that when the switch pitcher Senji came out from Mississippi State, Greg thought he should be the number one pick in the draft. He thinks that much of him, and you would hope that that's what the Cardinals wind up getting, is a guy with that sort of ability. They said they had to be overwhelmed for Brendan Donovan, and somebody made the point in the chat earlier, we're going to find out what overwhelmed is. For me, a prospect of that ilk, admittedly, I've never seen the guy play, but a prospect of that ilk is the kind of guy that I would expect would be an overwhelming offer for Brendan Donovan.
That's an interesting way to say it too, because you don't want to make the guy sound like a gimmick, but if he was that thought of to be a first round pick or a high draft choice, I guess the next question would be then, what is he? Is he a reliever? Is he a starter? Is he a hybrid of something we haven't seen before? Those guys are always intriguing. So I think you better make sure you have people who watch him. And when they have those debates on, well, how do we use him? I'd love to be in the room on when they figure out how to use a guy like that, because we just don't see a lot of them that have great success.
Yeah, and the gimmick factor, the entertainment factor of seeing a guy switch gloves from one side to another. I played with a guy that did that, so I kind of want to see it at a professional level. And that's where my intrigue comes from in wanting him. And I was there. I was at the draft when he was picked, and I knew going into it that it was that he was on the board, and you would see the highlights of him throwing from both sides. And
what did he do best? What did you like about him when you saw him?
There wasn't anything I saw best. It's just the fact that he was able to do both the same. It was the same level at both, that the scouts saw enough out of it to do that. And we've seen, if you look at his stats and you look at the stories on him through the minors, he is continuing to go from both sides. That it's intriguing to see, because who was it? Pat
Venditti
has done it. That's the most recent name of somebody that we've seen. I'm intrigued to see how a team would go about using him, and how often he's able to throw, how you handle that, how you take care of that day in and day out, and the just having to the maintenance that goes into that.
Well, and that's the other thing I think is important, because you may have a guy who could be a very intriguing player, or you can have a guy who's going to be playing for the Savannah Bananas in 2 years. I mean, so you have to be careful in having a brain trust who recognizes what's important. And I think the first thing that I would say is not his arms, but his conditioning. What is he like from the waist down? Is he a guy with velocity? Does he have control? Can he turn it over from both sides of the plate? I mean, there's so many questions I would ask. And obviously somebody's seen him pitch enough to think he was good enough to get to the big leagues. But you better have people within your own organization that can recognize what might be the best way to use him. Because if you don't and you mess him up, then you'll be the talk of the town for that for sure.
And actually, I was looking here, somebody in the chat pointed this out. So the Mariners had their version of winter warm-up this past weekend, and apparently he is going to focus on just throwing right-handed now. So no longer a switch pitcher. He's just going to focus on throwing right-handed.
Well, that makes it less fun.
I mean,
well, we don't need him there.
Right.
We got enough guys like that.
You still got it. I mean, you still got the left-handed arm to throw it. I mean,
But we don't know what arm is he good at, though. What arm is
well,
he good? What's his best arm?
Well, let's just wait till they ask Tommy John on the right.
Yeah.
See, listen, you know what? The Cardinals, I'll say it. Look, we don't have time for gimmicks, okay? We need to have guys who can actually play. And if he's already committed to one side of throwing, then he better be damn good at it.
Claibs, I want to respond to that because I think what this trade says, and this is kind of reacting to what we're seeing in the chat too. I think now, not that it was any different an hour ago before we heard about the Cardinals trading Brendan Donovan, but when you trade down to the studs, I'm with you. I don't think the Cardinals are a 100-loss team, but I don't think they're close to being a playoff team either. And I think as we approach 27, my guess would be, and I know that Ollie is hoping that a lot of these position players will arrive this year and then be ready to go in 27. But then what about the pitching? I don't see this pitching being good enough in 26 or 27 for the Cardinals to be a legitimate contender. I'm not saying they won't contend for a playoff spot, but in terms of for a division or for a championship, a National League championship, I just don't see it. So I think the Cardinals, they're telling us that they're in a rebuild. I think they actually do have a little bit of time here.
Well, see, I think, and you make a good point about the pitching because I think you're judging what we saw last year, and that wasn't enough. I think the acquisitions have to have an impact. The guys who we were hoping, the Quinn Matthews of the world, and we already saw McGreevy a little bit, they've got to be able to step up and make a legitimate contribution and get some legitimate innings out of them. I mean, you can't keep babying guys, okay? This is the big leagues. And for a guy, he's got 120 innings. I don't keep going because you know what? The good teams have guys that can go deeper. And, as good as Scuba was, he didn't even pitch 200 innings because they babied him, and that's how he ended up being successful. Now, if you have a good bullpen, then you can get away with it. So, again, maybe the investment is in bullpen where you ask guys to give you 6 good ones and then you turn it over to those guys every night. But I think by what I saw last year, you're right. We don't have enough pitching, which is why Heim has gone out to try and find everybody who could throw his underwear in a hamper, let alone throw a fastball. So in that case, I'm looking at the new personnel having more of an impact on what this team looks like in 26 and beyond, because I've already seen the Palantes of the world and other guys and the Miles Michaelises. We've seen them. And when we look back on last season, we kind of frown upon those names because they weren't as effective as they needed to be. So now I'm looking at the other guys that they're bringing in, and they may not be the answer either, okay? They were available for a reason. So you have to take that into account on how do you fix them if fixing is needed, and I'm sure it will be. So you have to take that into account before you can go any further with regard to what this team is going to look like.
The one of the bits of news that kind of went under the radar, I think, at winter warm-up for the Cardinals was when they announced that Liam Doyle was going to be in the minor league camp. We have seen pitchers the past couple years that were first-round draft picks that made it to the pros, made it to the big league roster the year after they were drafted and pitching.
I think he's going to be one of them.
And so he was drafted last year, and now he's starting the minor league camp, though, down at spring training. Is that something we should read into?
Yeah, you better. Listen, you don't take a guy that high in the draft who's pitched in the SEC and was really good at it and baby him along the way. This is what I'm talking about.
So why not have him in the major league camp? Why not have him with the
major
league?
I'm gonna let him get his feet wet.
Okay.
But you know what? That doesn't mean just because he's in the minor league camp doesn't mean he can't come over and get some innings in, just to see what he looks like.
Okay.
I don't think they want to tempt themselves to fall in love with him, because remember, spring training is the most misleading element of baseball. Pitchers are just throwing fastballs. Hitters are just tracking pitches the first couple of weeks, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, we got a guy who's ready to go. And if you don't believe me, ask Jordan Hicks. I can give you a whole list of guys that we were enamored with in the first 2-3 weeks of the spring. And then somebody says, we need to bring him north with us. Okay, now he comes north, and all of a sudden they start knocking him around a little bit. And the same thing with hitters. We all thought Jordan Walker was the second coming when he got out to a good start in the spring and was hitting nothing but fastballs. Had that, 15-game hitting streak when the season first started. Then they started pulling the string on him and throwing him pitches away, and he didn't make the adjustment, and, things haven't been what you would want them to be at this point. So I'm always cautious of it, but I'm of the belief that Liam Doyle, if there's an injury of some sort, somebody doesn't produce, I expect to see Liam Doyle around the All-Star break.
I'm with you, Mike. And for those that have been to spring training, and it just makes sense. Cardinals are bringing 36 pitchers to camp. There's only so many bullpens to throw for all of your pitchers. So if you have 36 guys roster and non-roster,
hey Randy, that's 36 today. It might be up to 40 by tomorrow, but at the rate we're going.
You're right. But this will provide a guy like Doyle more opportunity to get his bullpen and his regular work in down in the minor league camp rather than the major league camp.
Yeah, and again, spring training is so tricky, man. You give a guy an inning here, or maybe you let him go 2 innings. Maybe you say you throw 25 pitches. And I wonder if that's still the right way to go, considering how much these guys throw in the offseason. There was some guys who didn't throw till they got to spring training. Now these guys are having some sort of throwing program. So maybe they're further along. But I guess no manager and no pitching coach wants to have on his resume that he ruined a guy because he threw him 30 pitches instead of 25 in spring training. If it's coming out of his hand smooth and he's feeling good, why not? And I think the next day is how you find out what kind of guy you have with respect to recovery. So there are a lot of things. I'm anxious to hear from Chaim and Ollie and Dusty about the approach they may want to take now. And again, I go back to Liam Doyle. I don't take a guy that early to be in the minor leagues for 2 years. I don't see it.
I'm with you. I don't either. I just want to update folks. Brendan Donovan reportedly is on his way to the Seattle Mariners. Katie Woo reporting that the deal is pending medicals. Bob Nightingale of USA Today reporting that Ben Williamson, a utility guy, will be on his way from Seattle to Tampa. And we still, and this is an hour ago, that word came down very quickly from Katie and Jeff Passan that this trade was close. It's very rare that we get an hour past a report of a trade and we don't find out what the whole trade is.
Could a name like Newbar be involved in something like this?
I'd do it. I'd move
because if you're talking medical, or maybe they're jumping in and really taking a look at his heel and seeing if he can play. And is that a possibility here?
Yeah. So here's a question to that, and that's a good question you throw out. So I'm going to answer your question with a question. So does that take meat off the table if you throw Newbar in a deal? Because you're saying to the Cardinals, look, we're taking a guy that's coming off of a heel surgery. So that number 5 or number 6 prospect that you want may be a number 7 or 8. You see where I'm going with this, where maybe you don't have to give up as much and you're rolling the dice that Newbar is going to end up being okay. In return, you get a guy that you're going to need a little bit more time with respect to development. So it's one of those things on Seattle figures like their window is now. The Cardinals are trying to find a room where there is a window. So one team has time to develop. Another team is ready to win now. So, it's an interesting scenario for sure. But if you can put Newbar in that deal, then I think I could part company with that. I can find somebody to play left field.
All right, we're going to stick around for another 3 minutes or so until the bottom of the hour and to see if we can find out who the return is going to be. And We will have more tonight once the return, if we don't get it in the next 3 minutes. We will come back on the air with the reaction once we do find out what the return is going to be. I want to say one more thing about Brendan Donovan. He's and we talked about what a good guy he is. And a few years ago, when the Cardinals went down to Rickwood, he was front and center for that, right?
He's been more proud of a guy. Never was more happy with a guy and how he carried himself.
Why?
He just said all the right things. Here's a guy who never thought he'd ever play a major league game in his own state. A guy that just answered every question with dignity and respect and understanding the meaning of playing at Rickwood and all the great players that have played there. And, he was a guy who understood the history of the game. He just carried himself like a pro, man. And he stood out. And obviously he stood out with the performance that night as well. But I'll never forget how, and that was when it first occurred to me that this guy could be the face of our team. And he checked all the right boxes that day.
Yeah, he will for Seattle, and the tradition of buying the bottle of champagne for guys making their major league debut and having everybody on the team autograph that bottle. He's a great guy to have on your team on the field and off the field. So
have we seen the scheduling when they come to St. Louis this year?
We'll check that out here. Does Boston come here too? I mean, we got
Boston comes the first week of the season.
We got guys all over the place.
Yeah, Boston will be here April 10th, 11th, and 12th. The Mariners are here April 24th, 25th, 26th.
Okay,
so we'll get that all out of the way early. Good.
Yeah. You better get them starting on the tribute videos now. For
what
all
about
those
Arizona?
Guys.
What about Nolan? We got to find him too.
Diamondbacks are here June 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th.
Yeah,
4-game series there.
Yeah, like multiple old home weeks.
We'll have this thing maxed out at that point.
Start selling those tickets now. Start.
Hey, have a bobblehead night.
Yeah.
Hey, make sure that you subscribe, and you'll get a notification when we're going to come back. Once we know what the return for the Cardinals is in this trade, we'll come back. We'll have more reaction for you. And
hey, why does this feel like this is like an election night where we're just waiting on precincts to report?
So, Claibs, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. One time when we were at me and Howard Balls were at the Big 550, H-Man wanted to do 24 consecutive hours of draft coverage
by himself.
Well, of course he can.
He could have.
Yeah, exactly.
No commercials.
Well, I can tell you this: he won't have to worry about this. Once this deal is done, we will be as well.
Yeah. So, and we're pretty close to done here. Thank you very much for coming over to STL Sports Central. We will have more for you later. We apologize that Katie Woo and Jeff Passan aren't on top of it more. Come on, guys.
Oh, wait. Nope, nothing. I thought
No.
I saw Brenden Schaeffer tweet something and I got excited, but he was just being a smartass on there. I'll tell you this though. Hey, so next week, starting next Wednesday, Claibs and I, we have our hands full because we are going to have to introduce the St. Louis fans to a whole lot of new St. Louis Cardinals next week down in Jupiter. So,
well, that's
Claibs,
the place is finished by then. I mean, this place it's helter skelter right now over there. They got a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
I was told, and anybody who's ever had a house built or has been in a business, these construction people are unbelievable how they can take it right down to the wire. And if it's done, it's going to be on the last day, isn't it, Claibs?
Yeah, well, I think the inspector comes in on the 4th, and if he likes what he sees, and you can start moving in on the 5th.
Wow.
If he doesn't, then I'll come back tomorrow.
All right.
Or certain areas won't be available to be used. But listen, I've never seen that much manpower at the facility in my life, players included. I mean, it's not like a lack of effort. They're really putting some work in. The flowers are all planted around the ballpark. The irrigation system is in. They put the roof on the batting cage, which is big enough to house a 757 plane. I've never seen a batting cage that big in my life.
Great.
And the commissary weight room, that area is massive. You won't know the joint. to
All
the
right.
point where the doors we used to go in, they have their plywood up said this is no longer a door. So I don't know what they're going to do with it.
So where do we go? That's a question.
Great question.
Right.
I understand that they have an area for the media.
Okay, good.
I understand that they have an area for the media, at least Cardinal Productions and some other stuff, but it's still a work in progress.
All right. We will talk to you later.
Okay? All right. We'll do it.
Joseph, great work.
Thank you. We'll be back on later tonight, I'm sure.
No doubt about it. Wilson, thank you for getting us the scoop. Wilson always on the Twitter machine, and thank you for being a part of our instant reaction on STL Sports Central. More coming up later when we find out who the Cardinals give back in return for Donovan. And we are presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. So long, everyone.